So now we're going to get into a loose version to paint some budding flowers. So this technique could also be used for tulips, but the one we're doing is going to have some more petals to it. So I'm just going to load my paintbrush up with paint, make sure it's nice and wet, and then I am going to do some C-strokes from the stem where the stem's going to be an upward. So like so, just very loose. And if you grip your paintbrush a little bit higher, then you're gonna have an easier time doing these strokes. So I'm just doing some quick movements here, and then this will be toward the back, but it's the top of the shape we just created, and they're just a couple of loose strokes that are peekabooing, and then we're keeping that white space in there so that you know that there's that separation between the front and the back. Ideally, it would be better if you had them to be a little bit lighter in the background, but that's totally up to you. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a different tone. I'm picking up an orangey color now so that I can add some dimension. And now we're going to do another one just to the right of it. So plenty of water on my brush and going into my loose strokes. And load up with paint as much as you need to. Just easy C strokes, that C shape. And then you can go in and do some fine line detail just to ensure that you have the correct amount of white space that you want. And the more that you do this, the more it will come naturally, and you'll probably just need to do once over. But this is a way to show you how you can get more control over that. Also adding that warmth into this one. And then I'm moving to the side just below so that I have more of a full composition. Do those broad curved lines, keeping some white space in there. And again, to make those, you just do that that full pressure on your brush and then lift up toward the end. And the further outward that you go, the more it's blossoming. And then I'm just going to poke some behind, so that you can see that it's layered with more petals in the back, and then see how it's getting lighter toward the top. That's showing that separation between the front and the back. And then I'll go in and add that warm color to add some dimension. This is optional, it's not something you have to do. I just think it's really fun to add some warmth to a cool pink. So now we're going to add some leaves, so I'm going to rinse my brush really well in the water, and then I'm going to pick up some green with my paintbrush. So that light pressure with just the tip of my brush is going to create that little stem. And then to create the leaf, we're going to do this full pressure, and then lift up, and then full pressure, and lift up. And as you lay this water, you can always go back in and add additional pigment. It depends on how prominent you want these leaves to be. So it's fun to play around with different levels of that. Usually my leaves have multiple dimensions with their color and their opacity. So some will be really nice and deep pigment, and then some will be a little lighter, and then I'll add different tones. Like this is, we've got a warmer green and then a cooler green, and mix that in a bit. And leaving a little bit of white space in between those leaves kind of gives the illusion that it is the center stem. Remember, white space is your friend. We're going to do another one here. So I'm just doing a light stroke and then going in full pressure, go through and lift up at the very end. And then from that same stem, we're going to add another one. And see how this leaf, the second part of it, doesn't hit the base, and that's okay too. So because you're just adding in, these are, they're meant to be loose. So, and this one's a lot darker, lots more pigment. This is showing just more of a dimension, and this isn't something that is necessary. I do this because I personally like the way that it looks. So then I'm going to do some stems coming from the bottom, just real light. And then I'm going to do a leaf off of the bottom of this stem. So full pressure and then lift at the top. Full pressure into that same point. Notice that there's two colors in there. There's the warm color and the cool color, and those are blending together. And then same thing here. This is a warmer tone. And see the dry brush look? It can be really pretty too. I typically go in and make it a little wetter, but when your brush doesn't have enough water on it, sometimes that dry brush look can look really cool, really interesting. And then another stem here, coming off and making another leaf this way. And you can choose how long those stems are, so get creative with those because they can be short. Your leaf can come off the base stem, or they can branch out like this and make some leaves off the edges, which works for things like this when you want to put a leaf kind of coming from behind a flower. That initial stem shows that growth pattern. So these are things to think about composition wise. And this one's going to kind of peekaboo behind here. And if you accidentally go into your flower, you can always take a paper towel and then just dab the spot here. Notice that it's not picking up that pink. It's because that has already dried. And then that is kind of showing behind there. And then I'll add one here. And then you just kind of build on wherever you think that it might make sense to add leaves. So the other side could use some leaves for balance, you can probably tell. So we're going to go in lightly and then full pressure into that tip. Full pressure, lighten into the same tip. Two different colors here. We've got a dark and a light, so those are going to blend together nicely. And come through again. Overlapping is totally fine, especially when it's wet on wet, because it can, if it does bleed, it typically bleeds really pretty. And then we will poke one through behind here. So we'll probably just get a little more water. Probably just do one side and then bring that just behind. So see, it doesn't have to connect to the base and you still have that full movement in the leaf. It actually adds additional movement doing it that way because it's almost giving the illusion that the leaf is bending, which is kind of cool, or folding rather. And see that bleed, that's what I'm talking about when the leaves overlap. That bleed is really fun. I'm a fan. Then we'll have, how about one coming off of this area? And if you have like a much lighter color and the leaf that you're going over isn't wet anymore, overlapping that area would be fine. You'll get the hang of that part as you play and as you practice. And then I'm just adding a little more pigment in here of a different tone just to give this particular leaf a little more dimension, but also have it blend a little bit better so it doesn't stand out as much, but you can still see that more of that lime green tone throughout a few other leaves. And now I'm going to switch out to a smaller brush, and this is going to be used with a brown color because I'm going to add some little twigs coming out of this bouquet. They're actually going to be little yellow balls. Those flowers like Craspedia, I believe they're called. So even with the smaller brush, just using the tip, light pressure, I'm going to drag away from myself and do this just throughout wherever I see makes sense. So this one's going to come off of the same, and just putting these wherever seem to make sense for me. You don't want to overdo it, but having them kind of sprouting throughout can be pretty because we're just adding a dash of color. So now I'm going to rinse my brush off, and then I'm going to grab a yellow color, and I'm just going to create an imperfect circle and leave some white space in the middle. So just a quick circle with white space. See, it doesn't take much to form these, just real loose. just at the ends of all of those thin brown lines that we just created. Just do this to finish it off so you can see just real loose. And then lastly, this guy over here. And then I think that that looks good. And this would be, at that point, a finished piece. And that is how you might do some loose florals that are budding. And then you can see how this could be, without having so many points toward the top, you could make tulips out of this. So, yay!